It's really, life is about education. Not just formal education, not just book education, not just academic education, but life is all about education. How do we raise the bar?
I think to be a teacher means to look at an individual and see how they can grow. I think to be a teacher also means to understand that you're dealing with a human being and not with a skill set or a score or a even in discipline. You're looking at an individual, and to be a teacher is really it's an honor to be a teacher, and it's a way to get to know people that other professions just don't have.
The first time I knew I wanted to be a teacher was when I was in probably, might have been 8th or 9th grade, and I did not like school very much, was not very good at school, but I really loved sports, particularly track, and I got an opportunity to sort of like help out working with younger kids, doing some sort of coaching of like elementary schoolers who were learning track and learning to participate in running as a sport. And that was sort of the first time I'd been really excited about helping people discover something and helping people learn something. I had an opportunity to sort of like be an expert, but be an expert who wasn't just sort of there as the expert and telling others what to do, but there as an expert who is helping others enjoy something in a really meaningful way. And so for me, that was this moment of real excitement that I was like, wow, I want to, this is something I want to do. I want to be somebody who will help others sort of explore knowledge and learning and things that they're passionate about. And so that was the first moment I knew I wanted to do something, I guess, related to education.
I had this funny phone call. A guy wants me to run for the legislature, and my grandkids suddenly got very serious, and they said, "Grandpa, you always told us you can't just talk, you've got to do." Well, Churchill once said that he is often called upon to eat his own words, and actually they're a pretty good dish. We'll see whether it was a pretty good dish or not. That history will have to decide that.
So my very favorite moment happened probably before I even got to UNC. I was a part of a program where I tutored students who were below grade level, and I had one student that I worked so hard with, and like we worked all the time, and she was failing when we got started, and it just looked like she was so behind, and we didn't think we could get her caught up. But by the end of the semester, she took her like end of course test, and she really had just needed some one-on-one instruction. And by the time she took that, like she passed. She was awesome, and she like sent me this text afterwards that was like, thank you for believing in me when I felt like no one else thought I could do this. And to me, that's like, like it's all worth it. Like I took so much time. After school, I was busy doing stuff like to prepare to come to college, and I was like, wow, all this was worth it. Like, not only did she get this content, but like she feels like someone believed in her that she could do it.
But I think that there's also something else to be said for the more mundane moments. And the best teacher moments often are moments that in the moment don't always feel like or seem like they're super important, but they are, because they are those small, tiny things that happen in a classroom sometimes that can feel frustrating and negative to us. Those matter a lot for kids.
Well, I was teaching at the high school, and one of my students that was making real progress was being harassed by another student. And actually in the hallway, the student was coming towards my student in almost like an assault. And my student took off his backpack and put it down, but no blows were struck. And then the next day, I got an email that he had been suspended. So I spoke to the principal, and basically told we couldn't do anything, and I spoke to the assistant principal, and I just said, I'm not stopping. This child was going to be hit. He took his backpack off, which was a normal thing to do in case he did get attacked. And, I just really need you to rescind the suspension. So I just went round and round until finally they rescinded the suspension. But the young man came in and told me, he apologized because he said, you looked upset when you broke up that fight, which obviously I was. Both taller than me. And he was just so apologetic that he had upset me. And he was very thankful. And then about, 6 or 7 years later, I saw him working, and he's just a fine young man, and full-time job. He's going to college part-time, and just, I could just see that he really had great potential to do great things. And I think sometimes when we have these rules, like anyone that's involved in an altercation gets the same punishment, is just unfair. And he is doing extremely well, so I was happy about that.
I want you to keep in mind, I'm not an educator. I don't pretend to be an educator. I don't teach school. I've never taught school. Don't really want to teach school. I see what teachers go through, and I'm wondering, why would you want to do that? But I know why you want to do that. Because it's inside of you. It's not up here. It's in here. It's a calling.
For someone who wants to be a teacher, to stick with it. If that's something you're passionate about and something that you feel strongly about, like if this is what you think is going to make you happy, you need to stick with it. I don't care what people say. I don't care how many teachers or other professionals tell you it's hard, or like it's not a good job, or the pay isn't well, or you could do more than that. Like, you need to tune them out and do what's best for you.
And a problem would be that North Carolina is going to have to realize that if they don't do something about the pay scale, we're going to have disastrous consequences. I teach college students, and teaching's a wonderful profession. It's a life-giving profession. It's a profession that you can just continually grow and learn in. But people have got to be paid a salary that's respectful of what we do, because the skill set to be a teacher is pretty extraordinary, and as you grow as a teacher, you just learn more and more.
Teacher pay. I think our state and other states are doing better, trying to do what they can, pull resources where they can to, supplement a little bit and give us more incentives to be teachers. But honestly, the low pay that we get, to me, is just heartbreaking. It's not because I'm incentivized by the money. I'm obviously not, since I'm still wanting to be a teacher, but other people are, and it throws people away from the field. They want to do other things when they could be teachers. It also makes people think that anyone can be a teacher. The low pay associated with it puts it in a low status, I feel like, in our society. So there are people who are like, oh, I can't find a job, well, I'll just be a teacher. Like, obviously it takes no training. They only make this much money. They're at the bottom of the totem pole. So I feel like we're moving in the right direction and things are getting better, but when they take away things like master pay, when you get more money for having a master's degree, they are just de-incentivizing people to become teachers, and that's what we really need.
No question, money's important. We need to ensure that our teachers don't have their car repossessed while you're in front of a class, and I was there when that happened to a teacher. We need to ensure that the teacher doesn't have to scurry out at 3:20 because they've got to be at work at 4 o'clock. We've got to do something about that. By the same token, just as we do not demand enough of our kids, we need to make sure the kids are getting what they need from the teacher.
I would say a good teacher understands that what he or she is doing is not a job. It's a vocation. You can become a priest or nun or a teacher or a coach, and all of these things are work that it's more than just the actual job. It's something that is potentially life-changing. And the good teacher knows that there are certain children in their room that the best time of their day is when they're with that teacher.
Well, first of all, maybe it is loose talk when I say I have great, great respect for teachers. It's not loose talk with me. Truly it's not. But I've got to, it can't just be talk. It can't just be talk, because talk's cheap. A lot of things for which legislators are blamed aren't really legislators, you know, it was not the intent, not the goal. Things happened, other people got involved, and we've made a mess of things. Okay. Let's unmake a mess of it. That's my goal. How do I unmess the mess? What can I do as a legislator to attract, support, encourage, and retain high-quality teachers in the classroom, in front of kids? What do I need to do? Now, I know the first answer, pay me more. I get that. Believe me, I get it. My response to it is it just the money? Really? Is that the whole thing? I don't believe that.
Well, you know, when I go to teach, okay, well, I wake up at, I don't know, about 5 a.m. You know, I really quickly get ready, get dressed. I look at the things I have to do that day. You know, if I have to lead a warm-up or have an instruction, I always have to look over that, make sure I have keys, make sure I know what I'm doing. I hop in my car and eat my breakfast as I drive. It takes me about 30 minutes to get there, and as soon as I get there, it's like boom, 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 like we start, you know, have to write the objectives on the board, put the warm-ups up. We have kids coming into our classrooms as early as 8:15. Our bell rings, our late bell rings at 8:45, so that's when first period begins. But we have kids coming in 30 minutes early. They're going ahead and working on stuff. You're pulling them out to talk about things. And then the whole day is just instruction, 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 you know, group work. I mean, the kids just come in and out. You feel like you have, you know, 5 to 7 minutes between the periods, but you have no time. You don't really get a break. Lunch really isn't a break. You are still monitoring the kids, answering questions, managing behavior, and as soon as they're out, you know, our planning periods are at the end of the day, and that's not a break. We don't really plan during planning periods. We have, you know, IEP meetings and parent conferences. We have PLCs. It's just we have a lot of other things to do. We have students who need to come in, and then after school, we have more kids coming in. You're doing tutoring sessions, or someone forgot their homework, or they turned in the wrong thing, or they left their English binder in your room, or, you know, it's just a lot of stuff, especially with the younger, you know, students. They need your help with a lot more than just school. And so then it's finally time. All the students have left. You still have things to do, but you can go home to do them. So that's pretty late, you know, more like 5 if you have extra stuff to do.
This is really important stuff. And I've become fundamentally committed to a process that's going to change how we deliver education in this state and maybe in this country. I moved to North Carolina in 2005, and it was after I'd retired from my own business. I moved here to be a full-time grandpa. And when one moves into a new area, geographically a new area, and you're retired, what are you going to do? You get up in the morning, you read the paper, you drink your coffee. Now what? Well, I tried that golf thing and it didn't work out so well. There was a school virtually walking distance to my house. I walked over, knocked on the door, and said, "What can I do to help?" That led to another school that asked me if I could maybe help over there. Well, since I wasn't working every day in any one school, I started volunteering in a number of schools. And the more schools in which I volunteered, the more interest I took in the whole process of education. And those schools were elementary, middle, and high schools. That moved on, and one day I received a phone call from a friend of mine who said, "Our member of the legislature is not going to run for re-election. I think you should run for a seat in the House." I said, "I have a seat in the House. My house. That's pretty good." No, of course not. Well, so I told my grandkids, "Wow, it's really pretty fascinating to see what's the role of the legislature in all this. Yes, it's money, but it's also policy and other things." And the more I got to know, the more I wanted to know. The more I got involved, the more involved I wanted to be.
Yeah, I would say like the biggest discouragement is like the stereotypes that surround teaching. It's really hard to tell someone you're going to be a teacher and then they are like, "Oh, well, you're like so smart, you know. I thought you were so smart." We're like, "Oh, you could do so much more than that." And in reality, I don't think there is much more you can do than to help our like new generations like grow and become the people that they're gonna be. Do you want me to tell you what I think about literacy? I think it's a basic human right. I think that everyone deserves to be literate and be able to, interact with people in this world in the way that every, educated college student gets, the opportunity to do. Just because you can't go into higher education or things like that doesn't mean like you should always be able to, fill out forms and understand what things that you sign mean. You should be able to do stuff for your children. I think it's a basic human right.